Donald Trump stuns the nation and the world by becoming the 45th president of the United States. What are the implications of a Trump presidency? And what about those pro-life and religious liberty concerns? Strategist Mercedes Schlapp is here with analysis. And we'll share my exclusive interview with the president-elect after his election. It means much more. And finally, November 11th is Veterans Day. Academy Award-nominated actor, director, and philanthropist Gary Sinise is here to talk about his work on behalf of our nation's fighting men, women, and their families the world over. Begins right now.
Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. Mercedes Schlapp, President-elect Donald Trump, and Gary Sinise are all straight ahead, an all-star cast. And if you'd like to comment on tonight's show, or if you have a question, I'll be live tweeting throughout. You can find me on Twitter at RaymondArroyo.com, or you can email me at worldover@EWTN.com. Here's the brief news from the world over this week. On Tuesday, Republican billionaire businessman Donald J. Trump was elected President of the United States in a stunning upset over Democrat Hillary Clinton. Trump's improbable anti-establishment campaign gave him a convincing electoral college victory and will end 8 years of Democratic dominance of the White House. He'll govern with Congress under full Republican control. It'll be the first time since Herbert Hoover in 1928 that an incoming Republican president will govern with an elected majority in both houses of Congress. And Trump will also be the first U.S. president never to have previously served in the government. In his victory speech early Wednesday morning, Trump immediately looked to heal and lead the country in the wake of a deeply divisive campaign.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division. Have to get together. To all Republicans and Democrats and independents across this nation, I say it is time for us to come together as one united people. It's time.
Standing before a crowd of heartbroken supporters on Wednesday, Hillary Clinton said during her concession speech that the election proved to be more divided than previously thought, but she also urged unity.
I still believe in America, and I always will. And if you do, then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
Exit polls indeed reflected deep racial, gender, economic, and cultural divides between Trump and Clinton voters. The Trump victory was fueled by a surge of working-class voters across a band of Midwestern states, states that had previously anchored Democratic presidential victories for a generation. Not this time. Trump broke through Hillary Clinton's vaunted blue firewall with wins in Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Then there were a few ballot initiatives of note. California, Nevada, Maine, and Massachusetts legalized recreational marijuana use, while Florida, Arkansas, and North Dakota voted to allow pot for medical purposes. Recreational pot was voted down in Arizona. Colorado, Arizona, and Maine will phase in a $12 an hour minimum wage. Washington State will raise its minimum wage to $13.50 by 2020. Nebraska voters reinstated the death penalty, reversing the legislature's decision last year, and Colorado voters have legalized doctor-assisted suicide by almost a 2-to-1 margin. And the battle to expel the Islamic State from Iraq's Nineveh plain continues. Iraqi Kurdish forces battled ISIS militants inside the Christian town of Bashika. east of Mosul. The offensive to reclaim the town is part of a broader push to drive ISIS out of Mosul, its last major stronghold in Iraq. Meanwhile, ISIS atrocities continue. Iraqi forces discovered a mass grave of 100 decapitated bodies on the southern edge of Mosul. Investigators found evidence of torture among those remains. And after retreating from Mosul's airport, Islamic State fighters have reportedly abducted some 1,500 families to use them as human shields. About 1 million people are believed to be still living in the ISIS-held city. And on Sunday, the head of the Roman Catholic Church in England and Wales visited the Gaza Strip in a show of solidarity for the remnant Christian minority living there. Cardinal Vincent Nichols called attention to their plight and praised Gaza's Christians, whose numbers have diminished during a decade of Hamas rule, an Israeli blockade, and a shattered economy.
I think the whole world is worried about the stability of the Middle East, and the numbers of people who have been driven from their homes are very, very considerable. And among those, there are many numbers of Christians, but it's not only the Christians who are persecuted and murdered by the extremists.
Today, just 1,200 Christians remain in Gaza. And Pope Francis continues to reshape church leadership in the United States. On Monday, Cardinal-designate Joseph Tobin of Indianapolis was named Archbishop of Newark, New Jersey. Tobin replaces longtime Archbishop John Myers, who's retiring at the age of 75. Archbishop Myers has faced some health issues. Archbishop Tobin, on the other hand, is 64, and he becomes the first cardinal to lead the Archdiocese of Newark, located just outside New York City and about 90 minutes from Philadelphia. Archbishop Tobin will be the second cardinal in the area next to Cardinal Timothy Dolan. Tobin is seen by church observers as closely aligned with the thought of Pope Francis, and perhaps a check on the more conservative Archbishop Charles Chaput in Philadelphia, who has yet to receive a red hat. And Cardinal Joseph Zen, Bishop Emeritus of Hong Kong and the most senior Chinese prelate in the church, says the Vatican's imminent deal with the state-run Catholic Patriotic Association will be a tragic mistake. The so-called deal would call for the Vatican to choose bishops only from those candidates submitted by the communist Chinese authorities. According to Zen, this arrangement would make the church totally subservient to an atheist government and would risk alienating the true Catholic faithful in the underground church. Meanwhile, the Vatican has denounced the self-ordination of an underground Catholic bishop in China without papal authorization. When we return, Donald Trump pulled off the greatest political upset in U.S. history this week, beating Hillary Clinton to become the next president of the United States. Fox News contributor Mercedes Schlapp is up next with analysis. The World Over continues in a moment. Stay right there.
I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans, and this is so important to me. For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
Welcome back to The World Over. The 2016 race for the presidency concluded this week as Donald J. Trump shocked pollsters and pundits and world markets by winning the highest office in the land. His largely unanticipated defeat of Democrat Hillary Clinton will transform politics and life in Washington, D.C. and far beyond. Joining me with analysis of this historic campaign and the candidate, I'm joined now by Fox News contributor Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes, thank you for staying awake through all of this. People don't realize, you know, we were on the night, watch, doing the entire, watching this thing unfold, and
I think we might have slept 1 hour. I think that's where we are
I think
right
I got
now.
an hour and a half in.
Oh, good, there you go.
But my mouth got no sleep. So let's talk for a moment about this call for unity. He says he wants to bring Americans together. He wants to unify the country. Is it possible, given the hostility that we are already seeing from the media, some columnists, both from Republicans and Democrats?
You know, I think that it is possible. I think that this is what is the beauty of American democracy, which is this smooth transition from one presidency to the next. And I think for Donald Trump, we saw, for example, that Jeb Bush came out, President George W. Bush, Romney. I mean, Romney, who was one of his biggest critics, basically saying, congratulating Donald Trump. And I think for the Democrats, they're going to need some space and some time to really absorb this shock. I mean, clearly they thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. And all of a sudden we see in the news and we see how this whole election has played out, and it was Donald Trump. And so I think for the Democrats, it might take them a little longer to get there. But we did see leadership from Hillary Clinton saying he deserves a chance to lead.
Let's talk about the media for a moment. The polls were drastically off. Every pundit, by and large, were drastically off. What did they miss?
They missed that silent Trump voter. They missed the first-time voter, because most of these polls are based on likely voters that have been, voting for the past 3 or 4, 5 presidential elections. These were individuals who, for the first time, decided, I am going to vote for this man. The enthusiasm was so great, whether it was from independents, whether it was from Catholics, evangelical Christians who came out in tremendous numbers for Donald Trump. There was really this show of force for Donald Trump in the election.
You see, I attended, as I do every season, I try to go to rallies for each candidate. I remember years ago seeing John McCain and Barack Obama in the same hotel, on two sides of a hotel. Well, one was like you walked into a deep freeze. The other was this explosive volcanic force of Barack Obama, and you knew when you walked in something was happening. I have to say, I attended a Hillary Clinton rally in Florida, and then just this past weekend, I went to Leesburg, Virginia, 12,000 people outside in the cold, carrying children in wheelchairs. 3,000 could fit in.
Miles to walk inside.
2 miles to walk up a dark, one-lane highway. They stayed there for 12 hours to wait for him. He didn't show up till 12:30 at night. When you see that kind of devotion, something's going on in these voters. They're hungry for someone to be their voice, and they're drawn to this person.
And what I loved about Donald Trump last night is he talked about the forgotten man and woman. And I thought that was a very powerful message, because I think for so many, you had the celebrities line up with Hillary Clinton, you had Obama, Michelle Obama alongside Hillary Clinton, but for Donald Trump, it was about the everyday American. And I thought that message of saying, I will be your voice and I will fight for you every day, and I am not part of Washington, I'm going to come in here and we're going to get things done. Governing, that idea of governing in Washington, something that we have not seen under President Obama.
You mentioned a moment ago about the big swings in the evangelical and Catholic vote, which was decisive. 81% of evangelicals turned out for Donald Trump. 52% of Catholics. He was 7 points up from Hillary Clinton, which that swing vote, the Catholic swing vote, even if it's that small, usually picks the victor.
Well, and it's very significant.
Why did they move?
Well, it's very significant for the Republican Party. I think the reason why they moved is that Donald Trump made a personal appeal to the Catholics. That interview that you had with him, I thought was incredible, an incredible moment for him to say, I want to talk to Catholic voters in America. Secondly, I think the WikiLeaks emails that showed that the Clinton campaign advisors were calling Catholics backwards. We're basically saying, look, we're going to plant a Catholic spring. Those are dangerous signs coming from the liberals. And I really think that looking at Hillary Clinton's extreme position on abortion was very troubling for many Catholics. And so I could see why there has been that shift. And that shift really impacts those states like Ohio, like Pennsylvania, like Florida, and Michigan. And I think that for Donald Trump, he really, I have to say, that Trump campaign advisory team, it was a powerful spiritual group of people who spent hours, and these are many professionals, both here and across the country, praying for this election and praying for Donald Trump. That is something I have not seen, I don't think, in any other election in my lifetime.
And the evangelical Jerry Falwell Jr. and the people he turned out, I mean, incredible numbers. Really.
There was passion.
And do you think it was the pro-life issue and the mandates coming from the HHS mandate in Obamacare?
Absolutely. I think it was,
were those the
look,
galvanizing
Supreme Court.
forces?
The appointment of the Supreme Court is critical because we know that the Supreme Court and the federal judges, that is the last stand for religious liberties in our country. And so for, I'm a mother of 5, they go to Catholic school, our church the fact is that if we do not have protections, religious liberty protections in our country, and we have another liberal Supreme Court justice, it really would have had impacted our churches in a negative way.
I want to roll this for you. Early Wednesday morning, Donald Trump gave his victory speech and had this to say about the movement generated by his unlikely campaign.
Ours was not a campaign, but rather an incredible and great movement made up of millions of hardworking men and women who love their country and want a better, brighter future for themselves and for their family. It's a movement comprised of Americans from all races, religions, backgrounds, and beliefs who want and expect our government to serve the people, and serve the people it will.
Blacks and Latinos turned out in this election in higher numbers than for Mitt Romney. Why? The rap on this guy was that Trump would alienate everyone, and it would be the least number of blacks and Latinos perhaps ever.
Well, I think for Donald Trump, he did a little bit better than Mitt Romney. I mean, Mitt Romney, in terms of the Latino vote, so Mitt Romney did 27%, Donald Trump ended up with 29%. That's not as good as I would like to see those numbers. We need to boost those numbers on the side of the Republican Party. But I do think, and in terms of the African-American vote, they just simply weren't enthusiastic for Hillary Clinton. So 87% voted for Barack Obama in 2012, 80% for Hillary Clinton this time around.
You just didn't have the numbers.
The turnout for the Democrats, the enthusiasm was simply not there for Hillary Clinton.
I want to play this, speaking of Hillary Clinton. On Wednesday morning, Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton offered a concession speech in New York.
This is painful, and it will be for a long time. But I want you to remember this. Our campaign was never about one person or even one election. I still believe in America, and I always will. And if you do, then we must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
What cost her the election, in your opinion?
A non-educated working class, college-educated working class, there was a significant shift over to Donald Trump. I mean, you're talking 30 points in states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin.
And what were they reacting to? Why didn't it work?
They were reacting to the fact that jobs have left their communities, that businesses, manufacturing jobs have left their communities, and that they are the ones that are dissatisfied with the job that President Obama has done as president, and the fact that they're dissatisfied with the federal government. And so Donald Trump's most simple message of making America first, about the American worker, that just simply resonated. The fact that he's willing to take on and renegotiate trade deals, which is not necessarily what you would call a Republican idea,
No.
It sold to these individuals who their wages have not gone up, who have lost their jobs, who have lost companies in their communities, and it is a matter to bring companies back to America.
On Thursday, President Barack Obama met with President-elect Trump. It has to be a tough moment for Barack Obama. He's essentially meeting the exclamation point on his legacy.
Absolutely. It is.
But what does it represent to you?
This election and Donald Trump's victory represents the rejection of Obama and his policies and his imperial presidency. The fact that he was unable to work with Congress to push forward significant legislations, and his greatest accomplishment was Obamacare, that is literally imploding before our eyes. Secondly, It was a rejection of Hillary Clinton's corruption. The fact is that she was still under FBI investigation on the Clinton Foundation front. Yeah. It just never ended for Hillary Clinton. And I think that factor of distrust really played strongly in this election. And the fact is that Donald Trump is saying, look, I'm flawed, I'm far from perfect, but I'm for you, the American worker.
Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, acknowledged the great gift Donald Trump ended up being. He pulled up many candidates who were lagging. Now, before the election, we were hearing that Donald Trump would be a down-ballot drag. He would kill off the majorities in the House and Senate. What happened, and what's to become Paul Ryan?
Well, I'm hoping first that Paul Ryan stays the Speaker of the House. I believe that he brings so much substantial policy knowledge to the game. I think that he can find a natural ally with Donald Trump, and they can work together to push forward many of these legislative items like tax reform, like immigration reform, moving forward on how we're going to renegotiate trade deals, the Iran nuclear deal, how are we going to move forward on that. I think that there are so many potential areas of agreement amongst a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and Donald Trump. And I do believe Donald Trump will be a bipartisan president. I think he'll bring in Schumer and Pelosi and say, look, we're going to sit down here and cut a deal. This is how Donald Trump functions. And I think that is healthy for our government here in Washington, because it's got to start working again. It's got to start functioning.
I can work with Chuck. I can work with Chuck. Mercedes, thank you for being here.
Always
you know
a
what
pleasure.
I loved about it? Just watching the president there meet with Donald Trump. You were watching the peaceful transfer of power. That is the beauty and the hallmark of this system.
Absolutely.
Good or ill, whether you supported the guy before or the guy now, it's a beautiful system.
God bless America, clearly. I mean, I think he was looking down on us and saying, I'm not giving up on you.
Yeah, well, even his own advisors and people say this was a miracle. We'll leave it there. When we return, my exclusive interview with President-elect Donald Trump, The World Over Live, continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. With his stunning victory this week, Donald J. Trump is set to become the 45th President of the United States. A few weeks ago, I sat down with him at the Trump National Doral in Miami to discuss some issues that have animated his candidacy, promises he's made, and we solve a persistent mystery. Here's my conversation with President-elect Donald J. Trump. Mr. Trump, thanks for the time.
Thank you.
I want to start with your mother, Mary Trump, who we hear very little about. But you said she had a flair for the dramatic. What do you see in yourself that you saw in her?
Maybe that. She was a terrific woman, beautiful woman. She was born in Scotland, came here at 19 years of age, met my father. They got married. They were married for 63 years or something. And they had a great marriage. It was very beautiful. But she was a very, very smart woman. And she was a very religious woman, actually.
Tell me, but we're talking about women. There's been a lot of confusion, controversy out on the trail. When I travel the country, people say, I'd like to vote for Donald Trump, but I don't think I could look my wife and my daughter in the eye if I did so. They're reacting to those Billy Bush comments and the reaction to some of these people who are accusing you across the country. What do you say to them?
Well, that never happened. Those were artificial. They were made up, just like at the rallies where they made up, they brought the protesters in, they paid them, they were thugs, and they paid them, I guess, $1,500 or something, and an iPhone. That was artificial and actually criminal what they did, and nobody understood it at the time. And it was put in there by the Clinton campaign. This stuff was all made up. And so I protested it, and actually witnesses have come forward, and much of it's already been debunked, but it was all made up.
What do you say to those who still have lingering concerns? Have you changed since those comments made
Well, it was locker room talk. It was locker room talk. The microphones, to be honest, should never have been on, but that was locker room talk. And it's just one of those things. I have it, I've said it, I've made my apologies. But again, just one of those things.
I want to read something Newt Gingrich recently said about you. He said, he is a transformational figure, but one
that reacts very intensely, almost uncontrollably, to anything that attacks his own sense of integrity. Do you regret some of the reactions you've made over this election season, and perhaps the way you phrased those reactions?
Well, you know, I started with 17 people, and it was a very, very nasty primary, and they were nasty to me. You know, people think I was nasty, but they were nasty to me, and I ended up winning. But no, look, you can't go back. You have to look forward. This was a nasty campaign, and, you know, people don't mention, but they were nasty to me. I think in many cases they were nastier to me than I was to them.
And as a president, you wouldn't react that way?
No, I don't think so. It depends. You react different way for different people. These were 17 people coming at me from every angle, and you know, I hit them hard. Most of them are now endorsing me. Some of them dishonored the pledge. They signed a pledge and they dishonored the pledge, and they'll have to live with that. But most of them have endorsed me.
I want to get into some issues.
Okay.
You weren't always pro-life, but you now are determinedly and decidedly
Yes,
pro-life.
I am pro-life.
You said you're going to appoint judges who are pro-life.
Right.
You're very concerned about the late-term abortions. What was the moment that changed your thinking, your heart on this?
Well, there were a number of moments, but one was a couple that I know very, very well. And you had a strong pro-life and you had a strong pro-choice. And they argued over, the mother was pregnant. They argued over the child. One, I won't get into specifics, but one wanted to abort. And the other said, we can't do that. We're not going to do that. Anyway, they had the baby. It's a long time ago. And the baby is such a magnificent person who I know, a magnificent person. And the person that was actually pro-choice is now pro-life because of it. And it had a big effect on me. But I've seen other examples similar to that, but I've seen other examples. So
it was a personal change.
It was a personal change. And, you know, Ronald Reagan made that personal change, too. Right. Many people have made the personal change. I mean, some make the personal change the other way also.
Right.
But I made the personal change, and I'm very happy with it.
Tell me about religious liberty. I know this has become a growing concern for you, particularly for so many faith-based voters and people who are in nonprofits, religious service people, whether it's the Little Sisters of the Poor or you know, these private businesses who are religiously motivated. They feel this Obamacare mandate, which demands contraceptive and abortifacient services as part of insurance, is intrusive. What would you do as president?
Well, let me tell you, religious liberty itself, take it in the biggest picture, is in tremendous trouble, okay? I mean, religious liberty in this country is in tremendous trouble.
You mean expression of religion?
I'm talking expression, and I'm talking anything else you want to talk about. People that are faith-based are not having, you know, they're just not having, they're not being accepted. It's almost like they're not being accepted in our country anymore. Obama has been a disaster in terms of religious liberty. And one of the things I'm very proud of, I was with pastors, ministers, priests, rabbis, on numerous occasions, large numbers. And at the first meeting, I could see I had tremendous support, like beyond. And I said, when are you going to endorse me? And they said, we can't do that. And I said, why can't you do that? They said, we're not allowed to do that. If we did that, we'd lose our tax-exempt status. And I said, why is that? And they told me about the Johnson Amendment, 1954. And I thought about it for a month, and we had a meeting again, 56 different pastors, ministers, et cetera. And I said, we're going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment because our pastors and ministers should have the right to go out and speak their minds. These are the people we respect. And they're actually precluded from speaking their mind. If they speak their mind, their whole tax-exempt status can be taken away.
From under the man.
So we're getting rid. And I think it's one of the most important things that I'll be doing for the evangelicals and for religion. So I think it's very, very important. So we're going to get rid of the Johnson Amendment.
And what about Obamacare? The administration admitted these premiums are going to go up 25% on average, could be 50% in some markets. Given that, and this religious objection to the Obamacare mandate, what are you going to do as president?
Obamacare is killing our country. It's killing our jobs. It's a disaster. I've been saying it for a long time. I've been talking about it for a long time, before it was even approved. Whether it's healthcare savings accounts, or, by the way, there are many things, but healthcare savings accounts are phenomenal. You have to break up the lines between the states so that we have competition. Once you create competition, those numbers will go so low, but you have to repeal and replace Obamacare. It's a disaster. And the number of 25%, Washington came out, say, I'm sorry to say your number's going up 25%. It's wrong. It's going up 50%, 60%, 70%, and next year it's going to go up again. It's going to get worse. And Hillary Clinton wants to keep Obamacare going, and people are going to be paying hundreds. I mean, when you really look at it, they'll be paying 150%. It doesn't work. It's no good on its face. It doesn't work. Never would have worked. Should have never been approved. It was approved by a lie. I mean, let's face it.
At the last presidential debate, Donald Trump was asked this question.
Do you make the same commitment that you will absolutely accept the result of this election?
I will look at it at the time. I'm not looking at anything now. I'll look at it at the time. I will tell you at the time. I'll keep you in suspense.
You mentioned Hillary Clinton. She is saying your unwillingness to accept the election results, which happened at the last debate, she says this poses a direct threat to our democracy. Does it?
Well, you know who said the same thing, and I won the last debate, according to everybody. I won it easily. But you know who it really said it pretty well was Obama. When he was running in his first election, they asked him the same question, and he talked about rigged elections and rigged everything else. Our system is rigged.
What do you mean when you say that specifically?
Whether it's through the
Not
media.
the electoral process.
Well, you know, Obama said it was. I mean, he said the electoral process is rigged. I mean, all you have to do is go back and look when he ran, when he first ran.
But are you worried about the counting of votes?
Well, if you look at research, certainly there's some of that going on. We can be babies and say it doesn't happen, but certainly if you look at Philadelphia, if you look at Chicago, if you look at St. Louis, if you look at Obama's statements from 8 years ago, take a look at his statements, what he said about it. I saw it last night. It was like incredible. He was far more outgoing as far as that's concerned than I am. But overall, what I'm really concerned about is the system is rigged, whether it's the media rigging the system. There's so many things wrong. Look, Hillary Clinton shouldn't be allowed to run. She lied. What she did with her emails, where she deleted 33,000 emails, she shouldn't even be allowed to run for the presidency. She gets a subpoena from the United States Congress, and she deletes her emails. Now, James Cartwright, General James Cartwright, may go to jail for 5 years because he lied to the FBI. She lied to the FBI probably hundreds of times. And she's allowed to do it, but a 4-star general is going to go to jail? She shouldn't even be allowed to run for the office of president.
You mentioned emails. These WikiLeaks revelations have offended a lot of evangelicals and Catholics.
Right.
Now, these were members of Hillary Clinton's staff, John Podesta, her communications director, and they said things like this. They suggested that they needed to plant seeds of rebellion in the Catholic Church to somehow change the teaching to accommodate their political agenda.
Sure.
They said it was a backward, middle-aged dictatorship. Now, that's her staff. Is she guilty of that? Should she apologize?
It's her. It's her. She should apologize. I think she has to do more than apologize. No, that's her thinking. That's her staff. Frankly, if any Catholic votes for Hillary Clinton, you know, I would say if I were a Catholic, I wouldn't be talking to them anymore. She's been terrible in what she said and her thoughts toward Catholics and to evangelicals. She was mocking evangelicals also. So you'd say, why would an evangelical or a Catholic, and almost you could say anybody of faith, but in particular because they were mentioned, evangelicals and Catholics, why would they vote for Hillary Clinton and how could they vote for Hillary Clinton? But that's her speaking, believe me.
Well, it's her staff. Do you think it reveals a mindset in the administration? Is that what you're suggesting? Or in her campaign,
I think it's
rather?
her. Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a top person in her campaign. I think it reveals her, yes.
I want to talk personally about you. When you pray, what do you pray for?
I don't want to talk to you about that. I mean, I pray. It's very personal to me. I'm a person of belief. But I certainly, you know, I pray for my family. I pray for our country.
Yeah.
But I don't want to talk to you about that. I think that's very personal.
Okay, between you and God.
It is between me and God, yes.
You're a Presbyterian, so I don't want to drag you into other realms. Do you have a favorite saint?
Well, I think that if you look, Mother Teresa, who's probably our newest, is great. And
incredible.
John Paul, Pope John Paul, I thought was terrific.
Why?
Because it had something special, had a special something. There was a warmth. There was a toughness, but there was a warmth that was incredible. So I certainly think Pope John Paul.
You have said this is a movement. You're the leader of a movement. Whether you win or lose, what are the issues that this party, the GOP, will have to contend with as part of that movement?
There are many issues. The biggest issue right now is the judges, Supreme Court judges, but Obamacare is a massive issue. The Republicans have to get rid of it. They've been unsuccessful in doing it. I will get rid of it, and I'll replace it with something much better and much less expensive for the people. Jobs have to stop leaving our country. Our military has to be rebuilt, and we need it's been very depleted. The military has to be rebuilt. We have to take care of our vets. We have to protect our Second Amendment, which is under siege. And we have to have strong borders. Right now, people are pouring into our country. Drugs are pouring into our country. We have to stop the people and the drugs.
Now, Hillary Clinton says we need more of these Syrian refugees in. These people are suffering abroad. They need to come home, and they need to come here. And we as a country should be open to them. You would say what?
I would say she's crazy. I would say that it's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. We have no idea. We're not vetting them properly. We have no idea. Are they ISIS? Are they not ISIS? Where are they coming from? Who they are? We're taking them in by the tens of thousands right now. And Hillary Clinton wants to upgrade that by 550%. I would say to you, it's crazy to be doing this, and I will stop it immediately. We will not have radical Islamic terrorists coming into our country, and some of them will be radical Islamic terrorists.
And then there is this. In appearance after appearance, there is one bit of Trump syntax that has created debate in households across America.
But we have to also get back, and we have to solve it big league and strongly. Someday, I believe that will be proven out big league.
We are all suffering, and we're suffering big league.
We're going to win big league, believe me.
Okay, my final question. It is perhaps the most portentous. We've been seeing on social media, we've been seeing it in the New York Times, in USA Today. Are you saying bigly or big league? And my guess is within, so there's money riding on this.
Well,
Bigly or big league?
now let me ask you, you're talking about for me?
When you're speaking on the podium and you say, this is...
I use big league.
I was
Good.
right.
Okay,
Big
good.
league, you've settled it.
Okay, thank you.
This is going to be an interesting administration. We'll see how this pans out in D.C. When we return, actor, director, musician, and father Gary Sinise joins us to talk about his work in service to our nation's veterans and the Catholic faith that inspires it on this Veterans Day edition of The World Over. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. My next guest was nominated for an Oscar for his portrayal of Lieutenant Dan in the 1994 blockbuster Forrest Gump. He's also an Emmy winner, a family man, a bassist in a rock band, and the founder of his own foundation, working on behalf of our nation's fighting men and women. On this Veterans Day weekend, it seemed the perfect time to speak with Gary Sinise about his career, how he decided to take up the concerns of veterans, and the work that has become the focus of his life. I spoke with Gary at the Gary Sinise Foundation offices in Southern California. Take a look. Gary, I want to start with your acting career because there's a nice tie-in. Really, the theater and film gave way to this, what's become your life's work. Tell me a little bit about how you stumbled into the theater in high school.
Well, I was playing in a band, in a rock band in high school, and I was standing in this hallway with members of my band, and we looked pretty scruffy, I think, and the drama teacher, this little lady, this powerhouse kind of tornado of a lady, walked down the hallway. She turned around, she said, "Come and audition for West Side Story. You look perfect for the gang members." And then she pedaled off, and I had just seen the movie of West Side Story or something, or actually I was in a different high school when I was a freshman than a sophomore, and at the other high school they had done West Side Story. That's what it was.
Oh, so you were
and
familiar
I saw
with it.
And then I moved, and it's my sophomore year, and now my new high school is going to do that play.
Then right after high school, you and two of your friends find what's become now an institution, Steppenwolf Theater Company. And you started in a church basement.
Yes. So I did my first play as a sophomore. It was West Side Story, and I met Jeff Perry, he played Tony in the show, and we became fast friends. We did a lot of plays in high school together. And after I graduated, I, with some of the kids, started this theater. And Jeff was at college, and he met this buddy, and they became fast friends, Terry Kinney, and we were doing this theater up in Highland Park, Illinois, and they were down in the central Illinois at Illinois State, and I said, come up for the summer and do a play with us. So they came up, the three of us bonded, and we said we were gonna make a go at starting a real company when they got out of college, which we did, and that became Steppenwolf Theater back in, the origins were 1974, and then we started that group in 1976, and ironically, I was looking for a space in Highland Park, Illinois, that we could do this in, and there was a Catholic school that had closed down. The parish was there, but the school had closed. And there was a basement of this place that the youth commissioner in this town knew about, because they had used it for like a teen center. He took me there. I saw the space. I thought we could put a theater in there. I went to the priest and said, would you let us have these kids? I was 18 years old or something.
And
would you let us have the basement so that we could do plays in there? And he said, sure.
Oh my God, and that's really where this institution now, I mean, look, you've gone to Broadway and the West End and films, and I mean.
Our first permanent theater was in the basement of a closed down Catholic school. Yeah.
It was a harbinger of things to come, Gary.
How about that?
Now, then you play, of course, Lieutenant Dan Taylor in Forrest Gump years later. I'm fast forwarding. That role, it not only marked you in the minds of so many people because that was such a beloved role, but it also opened up a whole new world for you in the work that you're doing now.
Yeah, I have veterans in my family, and on my wife's side of the family, 3 Vietnam veterans, her 2 brothers and her sister's husband. So back in the 70s and early 80s, I got this education from the Vietnam veterans in my family about what it was like to be a Vietnam veteran coming home from war and how difficult that was for them to not only fight in Vietnam, but to come home to this nation that was divided and turning its back on them. So I got involved with Vietnam veterans back in the 80s, just trying to support them in the Chicago area, and then I moved out to California and was trying to get in the movie business, and I started auditioning for some things, and I did a couple of movies, and then along came the audition for Forrest Gump to play a Vietnam veteran. So, having spent the time with the Vietnam veterans in my family and others in Chicago, trying to help them, I very much wanted to play that part. And I went in and auditioned for it, and I got it. And that was very, very fortunate because it changed a lot of things, not only my acting career, but it gave me an insight into our wounded that I hadn't had prior to that, and that I've lived with ever since.
Well, I know a lot of the veterans, they saw you in that role and so identified with you. Did that was that really the catalyst that opened so many doors? I mean, because when Gary Sinise walked into Walter Reed or walked into a combat situation, it was Lieutenant Dan that walked in with him. In their minds.
Well, you know, that was a time where my face was more well known than my name. Because the movie was so...
It's huge movie.
It was huge. Everybody saw it.
Yeah, you were nominated for the Academy Award.
Yeah, and but not a lot of people knew who the guy was that played Lieutenant Dan. They just saw Lieutenant Dan. And when I started going on USO tours and all of that, they started calling me that all the time. And I'd go into the hospitals and go into these rooms with double amputees, and they'd want me to talk about that character.
And then on 9/11, in the wake of 9/11, you tell the story of being at a church, and you felt a calling. Tell me about that.
It was actually 3 days after September 11th. September 11th was on a Tuesday. And that Friday, George Bush, the president, called for a National Day of Prayer to happen on the Friday after September 11th.
Right.
So churches all over the country were just packed. They were
with people.
filled. Everyone was going to their churches just trying to find some healing, something to help, deal with our broken heart. And I went to our local Catholic church, and our kids had been going to the school there, and I remember standing room only. I was standing up on the side, and they were singing "God Bless America," and everybody had tears, and I mean, it was very powerful, very moving. And our priest was moving in his homily that day, talking about service and how service above self was very healing, and that we all needed to try to do something to help our country heal. And I heard that very specifically that Friday after September 11th, and that, I think, galvanized something in me, and I just felt called by God to do something to help heal the men and women, who were deploying in response to that event. Once we started deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan, and we started losing people, they started getting hurt, I thought that's where I can place my energy. That's where I can serve. I've been involved with Vietnam veterans. I don't want our active duty folks deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan to come home to a nation that treated them the way our Vietnam veterans were treated. So what can I do to help? I can go out there and pat them on the back and visit them and do things. And I started doing everything I could to just pitch in, and it all manifested itself into the creation of this foundation that I have now.
Tell me about this RISE initiative that you have created.
We have 5 surviving quadruple amputees. Service members have lost both arms and both legs. The first one survived a bombing in April of 2009. And I had a trip to go to Walter Reed to visit folks. My buddy who was over there called me up and said, "We've got a quadruple amputee here. He's the first one to survive that injury. He's going to be at Walter Reed. When you get there, go see him." Wow. So I did, and about a year later, I did a concert to raise money to build him a home. And in the meantime, we had several others come in with the same injury, losing both arms and both legs. So we ended up doing concerts to try to raise money to help build these houses.
And these are not just your run-of-the-mill house. These are houses that are really, they're tricked out and accommodate their injuries.
Once I started my foundation in 2011, we created a program to help build these homes, and that's our RISE program, Restoring Independence, Supporting Empowerment. They've had a lot of their independence taken away because they can't do things for themselves.
Right.
And when they're living in a house that isn't specifically designed to their needs, there are a lot of problems. They can't reach up to the cupboard or whatever it is.
Yeah, they can't get upstairs if they
we
have to.
put all kinds of stuff in these houses to allow them to take care of themselves so that their caregiver, if it's their wife or their mom or dad or whoever it is, can have a little more independence themselves and their children. And so we provide these specially adapted homes, and they're very nice homes. They're all specifically designed for them. We have one that we're going to be dedicating on Veterans Day.
Tell me about Luis Avila, who you are going to be gifting one of these houses, one of the houses your foundation has created, on Veterans Day.
Luis I met at Walter Reed.
Wow.
And Luis has a traumatic brain injury, a very serious traumatic brain injury. He's confined to a wheelchair. He's missing one leg. And when I first met Luis, he could barely lift his head up or make any sounds at all. To see him today and to see how far he's come is really miraculous. I mean, I've known them now for 4 or 5 years, whatever it is, and they've been living in a rented house. Yeah. His wife, Claudia, is this amazing tour de force who has fought for him every step of the way and raising their kids and fighting for Luis to get him the care he needs. And I offered to support them with the building of a specially designed home just for them through our RISE program. And almost every day, I'm getting choked up. almost every day I will get a photograph, a text from Claudia, because she goes to the house every day to see
check the progress.
Here's the floors are in, and now the thing is in, and now the doors are in, and now the windows are in, and look at this, and look at that. I mean, they're busting at the seams. And this is this is a family. Luis he's made tremendous progress, but he's always going to need
Special
care. You know, he's always going to need somebody to help him with something. So this special house will do something for this brave soldier who went out to defend our country, who
5 tours of duty.
Yeah, I mean, you have to read his story. You can go to the Gary Sinise Foundation website, go to our RISE program page, and look up Luis Avila. He's given so much, his family has given so much, that to be able to give them something back, give them a home that they can call their forever home, where she can have all this support inside to help her care for him, and where he can be a little bit more independent himself in there. And the kids will be able to grow up in there and come home.
What a gift.
And have room, not be all crowded and cramped. It's going to be just a real wonderful day to be able to see them get into their house.
Tell me about this initiative that's happening. When I walked into your offices here in California. There are women, a guy, but mostly women, spouses of our vets and our deceased vets, the people who paid the ultimate price. Every so often you bring them together here. Why?
Well, unfortunately, we have just thousands of military spouses who have lost a husband, or a husband who's lost a wife. You know, certainly we've got children who've lost fathers and mothers. So we have a lot of grieving military families of our fallen. And I'm involved in, you know, a couple different very important initiatives that address the needs specifically of our fallen heroes and the families that they've left behind, the survivors. One of those organizations is a great organization that's been around since 1994, called TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. It was started by Bonnie Carroll when she lost her husband, and there was nowhere to turn. And so she started an organization just to help grieving family members of fallen heroes. I've had a great relationship with Bonnie and TAPS for many years. And I told Bonnie that I wanted to bring a group out and just give them a good time here in Hollywood. None of them had ever been here before. So getting out of their small towns around the country and coming to Hollywood and going to movie studios and meeting, you know, going to TV shows and doing different things, I thought would be just a great burst of joy for them, which they desperately need, going through this grieving that they're going through.
When we were last together, you talked to me about, in the 90s, you and your wife are driving along in a car in North Carolina trying to outrun a hurricane, and she announces to you that she's converting to the Catholic faith. And that was kind of the genesis of your own journey to Catholicism. Has this been a faith journey for you? This foundation and the work that it requires and the people you've come in contact with?
Oh, I think so, yeah. I mean, you know, I could say 20 years ago when I did Forrest Gump, I would have never imagined that my life would have taken this turn. I mean, I'm glad I've had the great success in the movie business that I have, because it's given me resources to do something positive. It's all part of the service aspect of what our faith teaches us. You know, service above self is so much a part of our church. And that, you know, like I said, I could have never imagined that that's where I would be going. But I remember very specifically when my wife said, you know, her mom fell away from the church when she was younger, so she wasn't raised Catholic, but at one point, my wife turned to me and said, I'm going to become a Catholic. I'm going through the RCIA program. When we get home, I'm going to go to the local church and blah, blah, blah. And she did. She did all that. And so we had our kids go to Catholic school, which was a great thing for our family. We were going through some difficult times in those days, and the church was a great healer in many ways. And it's been very important to our family, very important to me. And at a certain point, I just, something happened, and I said, this is a calling. All this stuff that I've done prior to this, movie business, the television work, the theater company, the success I've had, this is what it's for. It's to give something. It's to be able to educate folks about the importance of service, the importance of supporting our veterans. These are our defenders, after all, and they need champions.
Final question. After all these years, meeting with these wounded warriors, being with their families, I've always said actors are probably the most perceptive people on the planet, because you're reading things beneath the surface and on the surface. What have you learned from these people that you serve and work with every day?
We have some extraordinary, extraordinary people that are serving our country. I mean, the men and women that I have met in the hospitals, outside the hospitals, on the battlefield, at military bases, going through training. I mean, some extraordinary people at all levels. I've met the chairman of the Joint Chiefs all the way down, and everything in between.
Petty officers
and we have some remarkable folks, at our academies. When you go to our academies, and you see, the young people that have been accepted to those academies, that are serving there and learning, that are going to go on and be our future leaders. It gives you hope. It gives you comfort that we have a new generation of people that are going to be our future leaders. That's important. But also seeing what they go through, just trying to face the challenges that they faced, especially our wounded and our Gold Star families that are trying to get over these tremendous challenges that they face because of their service, is humbling, it's inspiring, and it's motivating. It motivates me every day to keep on this mission of trying to do something with what I've been given to support them.
You can find out more about Gary Sinise and the work of his foundation by visiting GarySiniseFoundation.org. Check them out and see how you can help our nation's veterans and wounded warriors. Well, that is all the time we have until next week. The show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter. The links are at RaymondArroyo.com. You can also sign up for my free e-blast, and you should do that. I send out all kinds of interesting things. Be sure to join us again next week. Fox News Chief Washington Correspondent James Rosen will be here to talk about William F. Buckley and a brand new book he's assembled. And we'll preview the upcoming Consistory of Cardinals with Papal Posse member Robert Royal and the National Catholic Register's Edward Penton from Rome. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thanks for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo from Washington, D.C. Bye now.